Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Garry Ridge. I will tell you all about Garry in just a moment. Grace Under Pressure is the show that deals with, we too often dismiss as the soft stuff, the caring, the commitment that we exert toward others. And when you do it as a leader, as you will very much discover that Garry is, you do it with a singular purpose to bring people together for common cause. So individuals, teams, and the organization succeed. Garry Ridge, it is an honor to have you on the show again. Welcome, my friend.
Yeah, g'day, John. It's great to be with you. I love your intro because, as you know, I have a love for Hawaii, and there it was, the beautiful view of the beach. So thank you for that.
Great. And anyway, so this is exciting. So Garry is the chairman and CEO of WD-40 Company, but not for long. This month, August, you are retiring, but you're remaining as chairman till the end of the year. And it's a role you've held for more than a couple of decades, which we'll talk about. And through that term, you've discovered a passion for learning and, most importantly, empowering others. And I love the culture that you have at WD-40 Company, because you don't have the word manager. They're called coaches. So they bring the best in others out. And so today we're going to talk about why. And with that, welcome, Garry. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. So
thank you, John. Thank you very much.
Great. The question is there is so much literature about people taking office, but relatively little about people leaving office. And so what led to your decision, Garry, to, hey, it's time? What?
Well, interestingly enough, John, this process started 8 years ago. And the reason it did is that leadership within an organization, particularly with a strong culture, it's important that we are really deliberate about what we want when we move on as leaders. And what was really important to me is, as you know, I love we call them my tribe. I love our people, but culture is a competitive advantage in our company. So we wanted to make sure that as we planned this, we picked the right person, and it had to be internal. It was not to be external. And why? Well, as you just mentioned, I'm just about to complete my 25-year apprenticeship of leadership. I've been leading the company for 25 years. I've been there for 35 years as an employee. So the time has come for me to hand over the reins and to really meet my goal of building an enduring company that I would be proud to hand on to others.
Well, the fact that sticks out to me so much, and it's a positive, is that you are leading of your own volition, because too often we don't get to use our own lead. And the thing is that we'll discover you have planned this, because you just told me it was 8 years and it was an elaborate process. And so because the WD-40 Company is so culture centric, that presented a challenge, did it not, Garry?
Well, yeah, the challenge was that whoever was to lead, leaders succeed if there's trust of the team, of the people they're leading. And whoever was to lead needed to be a known identity in the company, but also they needed to have had enough experience time for people to actually see who they are as leaders. So that was really important to us.
Sure. Well, shifting gear, and I know the answer to this. So how well do you think companies handle succession planning and leave taking?
Not very well. Not very well at all. I mean, if you think about the number one responsibility of a board of directors, really, it's to ensure that succession is clearly defined. And I don't think that there's always enough thought around that. So I think, there's an opportunity for improvement.
And I think that's so important too. Now, when we had spoken before, you used a word about your leave taking that I would not have thought about, but is 100% Garry Ridge and 100% WD-40 Company. And that is the word compassion. What did you mean by that, Garry?
Well, I think, compassion is really about, making sure that your ego is not taking over. And what you want is compassion and empathy. So compassion around, this is a hard change. This is something that, someone has to move into. So I think people have to be compassionate around, that time and that period. And we've been lucky enough or planned enough to have a good period of time between when we actually identified who my successor would be and then the time that we've been able to spend together up until I actually throw the keys to the door on August 31st.
Okay. Well, here's the interesting thing, and this has happened. So how did you avoid the horse race? You three guys have a chance if you behave well. So what was the process, Garry?
Well, we never really declared a horse race. We identified within the organization, we had a very clear, there's nothing like the freedom of a tightly defined brief. So we understood what we thought we were looking for. And that was, not only understanding of the culture, but, their experience globally. We're a global company. We operate in or sell our product in 176 countries. We've got 17 offices around the world. So they had to have an understanding of the difference of cultures. The culture of China is different to the culture of Spain, is different to the culture of the US. So, we looked at people across the organization and experiences, and then we said, these could be the people that could move into this role. And then we actually gave them different assignments to see how they operated. And I know you know about the story of my daughter, who's a dance teacher.
It's a good one. Please share it with us.
So my daughter Kate says to me, she's a dance teacher. She said, Dad, before you ever put a Broadway star on Broadway, they need to dance off Broadway to identify where the steps need or the dance steps need to be improved. So we gave a number of people different opportunities, and one person at the end, not only because of their experience and competence, but also the other thing that was really important, their willingness to disrupt themselves. Now, you and I have a very dear friend, Whitney Johnson. She wrote a great book called Disrupt Yourself. And whenever you disrupt yourself, great change creates great opportunities. So the person that we chose to give the opportunity to, Steve Brass, who's been with us for 31 years, he was based in the United Kingdom. And without promise of being CEO one day, we said to him, would you be willing to move from you and your family from the United Kingdom to San Diego and come and lead our Americas division to give you experience around the biggest culture that we operate in, which is in the US? That's a big ask. Now, I know how big that ask is because I do.
Because you live that experience. So Garry is a native of Australia.
In 1994, I picked up the family and moved from Sydney to San Diego. And I know that's a big ask. And Steve said yes. So we said, okay, someone who's competent, someone who's willing to disrupt themselves. And now the opportunity was for them to understand the culture of living in the United States. And although a lot of people think that although Australians and Americans and English talk nearly the same language, the cultures are so different. So that was one thing.
What's interesting, getting back to the idea of disruption. I mean, in the case of Steve, it was a physical move. That's a form of disruption, but also, but as Whitney explores, what does it mean in general to you to disrupt oneself, Garry? How do you reflect on that?
Well, we move up this curve of development, and we go from entering a new role to being, enthusiastic about it, but in some ways scared about it, if you will. And then we level off and we become competent. Now, if we stay at that competent level, that's where we stay. But if you disrupt yourself, it gives you the opportunity to raise to the next level again. And I think that's where the big opportunities come.
Yeah, and that's it's a scary thing, but I think it's a healthy scare. That doubt or perhaps fear. I think that means you're more grounded. That's my perspective. What's yours, Garry?
I think that's true. I've often said, when I was given the privilege and honor to lead the company back in 1997, I wasn't afraid, but I was scared. Because I didn't know what I didn't know. And here I was, someone who'd just been in the country for 3 years, and now I'm going to lead a US public company. And that's what really drove me to go back to school. Soon after becoming the CEO, I actually went back to school. I went to the University of San Diego. I did a master's degree in leadership. That's where I met my mentor and dear friend and then professor, Dr. Ken Blanchard. And that's where I started to really learn about the power of servant leadership, of what you talk about so much, which is grace and compassion.
Gary, that's such a good story. I mean, here you are, CEO, and going back to school as if you don't have enough balls in the air. You're doing a master's program. So that's quite a bit of juggling.
Yeah. Well, I had an objective, John. I wanted to confirm what I thought I knew and learn what I didn't know. And interestingly enough, I did about equal of both, because I had a lot of beliefs that around leadership, but I had never really academically been able to prove them to myself. So I was able to do both, which was really valuable.
Great. Well, that's the key to so much of you is, you every other word out of your mouth, I'm speaking metaphorically, is learning. And, and I'm going to pat you on the back, because when one says one is a learner, I take that as an act of humility. And especially when you've only been CEO for 25 years and I'm still learning, that's a good lesson for all of us, Gary. So
absolutely. I mean, we learn once we stop learning, we die. I mean, I was just sharing with you earlier, I was just on a webinar before I was on this call with you, trying to learn all of the new things I have to learn, because I'm moving off one system to another system. And it's scary in the beginning. I was uneasy. I felt, but then I got in, and now I'm thinking, okay, I got it. It's good. I got it.
Well, it's learning by doing. And so one of the things I want to, before we leave your career now, you and Steve did a joint broadcast together. And that was just a precious moment, I thought. And I go, yeah, that's the way it should be done. What went into that video, or the thinking behind that, Gary?
Well, when we announced officially that Steve was going to be the new CEO, which was back in March, I only had one objective, and that's to make this transition the best transition we possibly could. So we wanted to message not only the tribe, our people, but the outside world that, we're in this together. And that's what we did. So we made a video and we talked a little bit about what we're going to do, and we put that out publicly. And it was our way of saying, we got this. This is not something we didn't think about. And we got a lot of positive feedback on us being able to do that. And it was a very authentic, sincere conversation that we had. And in fact, even a little bit emotional. After doing what I've done for so long, every time I was recording the other day my legacy video, and it's a little emotional.
Oh, well, that's good, because it means you care. So one key topic in there is, you're a long tenured CEO. You've seen a lot, grown the company, succeeded through thick and thin, shall we say. 9/11, let's see, it's 9/11, the Great Recession, and then COVID, and other things in between. And so you've established yourself, you have a reputation, you're known on the street as well in the business community. How do you make it safe for Steve to be Steve and not Gary?
Well, Steve has to have his own voice. What Steve and I agree on completely and are totally aligned with are the strategy of the company and where he helped build it as well, and then our values in the organization. But Steve needs to go be Steve. And as I said to him one day, you're not me, and luckily you're not, because you have to be you. So Steve will be Steve. He's a different person to me, but I know he absolutely believes in our culture. He loves our people. He knows our strategy. He knows our brand. He knows our world. And actually, John, he's a lot smarter than me. So.
Well said. Anyway, so part of that, so you're leaving the company on good terms. And I think, so much of a leader's legacy is how he leaves the place. Do you not agree with that, Gary?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was only saying to someone the other day, my success is watching the company thrive into the future. I happen to plant the seed. Everybody grew the tree. and everybody now has to look after that tree going forward. And I'm very comfortable. And they better. I own some shares.
That's good. So now, what's next for Garry Ridge?
I am so excited. I've just completed my 25-year apprenticeship in leadership. And as you know, John, I have a passion about the need to create places where people go to work every day, they make a contribution to something bigger than themselves, they learn something new, they're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and they go home happy. Because happy people build happy communities and families, and happy communities and families build a happy world. And by golly, we need a happy world. So as you know, a couple of years ago, Marshall Goldsmith anointed me as the #1 culture coach in the world. So I'm hoping, and I will be talking to leaders about the power of a great culture, not only what it does to the business, but more importantly, what it does to the people. This whole thought of mine, John, started many, many, many years ago. I was on a plane flying from Los Angeles to Sydney. I was reading some of the work of the Dalai Lama, and this is what I read. Our purpose in life is to make people happy. If we can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. And what I saw around me, John, was a lot of leaders hurting people. And as you know, I invented someone. Actually, he's here. I can get him for you. This is Al, the soul. Al is the soul-sucking CEO of Fear Inc.
And sadly, Al is not one of a kind. So
right. So I hope to be able to help organizations build great cultures as the culture coach in my consulting business, which is called actually The Learning Moment.
Of course. And what again here, Garry, I want to give you a pat on the back as you're embarking on this new venture. I know you asked me questions and our friend Chester Ellison some questions, and it was kind of like you were just the new kid on the block. How do I do this or how do I do that? And I'm going, what? But that's your attitude, and we only grow if we open ourselves up to a new experience. So
absolutely.
So how would you, you have been internal for all these many years. So, and you're going to be working as the culture coach in the learning moment. So what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for you, Garry? So I'll throw you under the bus right there.
Apart from learning to run my own calendar, you mean?
Yeah. Answer your own telephone.
Yeah. Well, I always did that, but I think my challenge going forward is really entering this area of I don't know, and I'm happy with that those 3 words. I've often shared with you, John, the 3 most important words I ever learned in my life is I don't know. So my challenge is going to be moving from an environment that I've been in for many years into a new one, and that's scary. However, I am really, really passionate about the purpose. And I think I'll get a lot of enjoyment out of that, and so I'm excited about that.
Well, I think I look at you as coming into the world of coaching. Actually, in reality, you've been coaching for all the many years you've been working. That's your whole philosophy. And of course, as we said earlier, WD-40 Company is all about coaching people to success. But and you were saying something about CEO to CEO, which you still will be in mindset as far as towards someone else. But what would you say to a CEO who is saying, well, you're seeing that ego come forward as opposed to me versus we? What would you say to that, Garry?
Well, I think the first thing that we've got to do, and I love the book that Marshall Goldsmith wrote, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I've used that in my teaching at the University of San Diego, where I've been an adjunct professor for 15 years around culture. And I think the first place to start is look at these 20 habits and let's identify the ones that you think you overuse. Because I honestly believe, John, most people don't get up every morning with a real objective to be, Al, but the circumstances they operate in drag them into that. So my conversations would be, let's talk about, where these behaviors are impacting people and how do you think they are? So I think that's the place we'll go. And the other thing that I really love is when CEOs or senior leaders say to me, culture doesn't matter, John, I can actually call that out, because I can say, can I show you how over 25 years at WD-40 Company, we have taken employee engagement to 93%. 98% of our people say they love to work at the company. 97% of them say they respect their coach. And we've just about 6x revenue and taken the value of the company from just under 300 million to just nearly $3 billion. And at the end of the day, what do? We sell oil in a can. Well, we don't really. We create positive, lasting memories. But we've proven that it matters, because there's two things you need in business, just quickly. You need the will of the people and strategy. And if you have low will of the people, I don't care how great your strategy is. But if you have high will of the people and a reasonable strategy, then you're going to have a great outcome.
That's such a powerful thought. And the will of the people, that forms your culture. But the will of the people will only, certainly in a corporate environment, only comes through if they believe that the people running the company are in one step with those, the rest of us. Is that true? So,
yeah, you've got to create a place where there's firstly a dedication to, it's all about the people. You've got to have a clearly defined purpose. You've got to have a set of values that protect people and set them free. You've got to have a good strategy. You've got to be good executors. You've got to say, we don't make mistakes. We have learning moments. And then you've got to care about your people, be candid with your people, hold them accountable, and expect them to be responsible. And all that runs together in building culture. When I was at school years ago in Australia, in my science class, my science teacher gave me a petri dish. And the science teacher said, what we're going to do in this petri dish is we're going to grow culture. So what do you need to put in that petri dish? Well, firstly, what are the ingredients? So we know what the ingredients are to build a corporate culture. So now that you've done that, what do you need as a leader? Well, you need to love your people enough and to be brave enough, not only to reward them and applaud them for doing great work, but to redirect them when they need to be redirected. And you need to do it every day, because if you let toxins get into that petri dish, it'll set that culture sour in a heartbeat. So there's a formula.
Yeah, great. And then you've certainly mastered that. But you mentioned Marshall Goldsmith, our friend, and one of the things he often says so often, and you are a living example of this in the sense of it's lonely at the top. So CEO to CEO, how do you connect to help them be less lonely or deal with the isolation, if you will, not physical isolation per se, but I'm the person making at the top. What advice do you have for them, Garry?
Deal with it. It's real. Yeah, it's real. I mean, you have to have a heart of gold and a backbone of steel, and it is lonely. There's many a times, I've gone to a place of solace and put my hand on my head and thought, I don't really know, this is, and I've gone out and I've gathered the facts. I've got good advice. I've asked people, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, and you wake up as a CEO every morning and your actions are going to impact thousands of people around the world, and as having been a public company CEO for 25 years, there's one thing I am a little comfortable about: waking up on September 1 and not having to have that as my clear responsibility. I'm going to get a little bit of Garry back.
Well, that's good. So what did you have? You talked about, in a way, seeking solace or whatever, or how did you renew yourself when times get tough? What were the things did you do, Garry?
Well, a lot of that we've also learned from Marshall, but I have a little Post-it note on my computer here. It says, am I being the person I want to be right now? So what I have to do is remind myself of who that person is, because the impact of business will just drag us off to places we don't want to be. And then I have a list of who is that person. And my list is this, John: I want to be grateful. I want to be caring. I want to be empathetic. I want to be reasonable. I want to be a listener. I want to be fact-based. I want to have a balanced opinion. I need to be curious and a learner, and I want to throw sunshine, not a shadow. So I think, in those times, you've got to just center yourself. And, if you've ever seen my email at the bottom, I have a sign off. It says, believe in yourself, take one day at a time. We all have something significant yet to do. And I think that's what it comes back to. So I think it's...
There's also something else at the bottom of your emails, is that you may receive this email. I'm working in a different time zone from you, and we may be in different time zones, so whatever it is, don't feel you have to respond immediately. That is it's a little thing, but it sends a huge message, Garry. So
yeah. I mean, I have no right to interfere with people's lives in that way. That's why I have that on there. Is, I could be at a different time in the world, but don't think because I'm sending you this, you have to reply to me now. Do it when you can, and I understand that.
But you know what? That gives people permission to breathe, but also that goes, oh, Gary's a real person too. So that's
I am.
Yeah. Anyway, Garry, we are racing toward the end of a show today. And as you know, I ask everyone a story of grace. Do you have one you want to share with us today?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I'm going to take you back many, many, many years. So I think I was 12 years old, and I used to be a paper boy in Australia. I used to deliver papers. And there was a lady by the name of Mrs. Peel, and Mrs. Peel was elderly. And I used to take her paper to her front door every day. And at the end of every week, she would give me a bag of candy, or we would have called them lollies. And that I've never forgotten that. And what it's taught me is, if you show people you care, they'll show you that they care as well. So I love the story of Mrs. Peel.
Well, I think hearing that's a lovely story. And I think Mrs. Peel, who's probably gone to her eternal reward, has probably had a good influence on the WD-40 company. That's Garry, it's been such a pleasure to speak to you today. Where can people find you?
So find me on LinkedIn. Just you can search me there. It's Garry with 2 R's, Ridge, R-I-D-G-E, or you can find me at my website, www.thelearningmoment.net.
Great. Well, we will put that in the notes. Garry, it's such a pleasure to speak to you today, and thanks for sharing your lessons. And I know you have many more lessons to share with the rest of us as things go forward. So thank you, my friend. It's been an honor. So
thank you, John. Don't forget, life's a gift. Don't send it back unwrapped.
Great. Okay.